Tonight, a classic supernatural tale by W. Jacobs, an old charm that grants 3 wishes, each at a terrible price. The telling stays clear and unhurried. Listen for one thing, the price paid after every wish. Settle in by the fire, off we go. The visitor reached into his coat, drew out a small, dried paw and laid it on the table. It was a monkey's paw, shriveled and hard, no larger than a child's hand. The 3 people in the warm little parlor leaned in to look. Their guest was Sergeant Major Morris, an old friend of Mr. White, home at last after 21 years in India. Mr. White, his wife, and their grown son Herbert had listened all evening to his tales of far-off places, but now the old soldier had fallen quiet. "A holy man put a spell on it," Morris said slowly. "He wanted to prove that fate rules our lives and that those who try to change it will suffer for it. The paw grants 3 separate wishes to 3 different men." Herbert laughed, but his father did not. Morris stared into the fire, his face uneasy. "Better not to tempt fate," he murmured. "Better not to do something risky that seems almost to invite bad luck." Why, the family wondered, was he so afraid of one small, dried-up paw? "Have you wished on it yourself?" Herbert asked. The soldier's face went pale. "I have," he said quietly, and would say no more about it. Then, without warning, he threw the paw onto the fire. Mr. White, with a quick cry, snatched it back out of the flames. "Leave it," Morris begged him. "Let sleeping dogs lie, leave a settled thing alone before you stir up fresh trouble." But Mr. White was already brushing off the ashes. "If the wishes are yours to give away," he said, "then give them to me." Morris warned him once more. "If you must keep it, at least be careful what you wish for," a warning that getting exactly what you want may bring trouble you never imagined. Then he told them how it worked. Hold the paw up in your right hand and speak your wish aloud. After that, the old soldier changed the subject, and at the door he refused every last question about it. When he had gone out into the rain, the family sat looking at the ugly little thing, half laughing, half afraid. What should they wish for first? Herbert had an idea. "Wish for money," he said, half joking. £200 would clear the last of the house payments. His father smiled, lifted the paw in his right hand, and spoke the words, "I wish for £200. At once he gave a shaky cry and dropped it. "It moved," he gasped. "As I spoke, it twisted in my hand like a living thing." The 3 of them stared at the paw on the floor. Nothing else happened. No money appeared. Outside, the wind moaned in the chimney, and a door banged somewhere upstairs. Mr. White was beginning to have second thoughts, to feel a slow, cold doubt about what he had just done. Herbert laughed it off and went up to bed, joking that he saw no sign of £200 anywhere in the house. His parents smiled, but the smiles did not reach their eyes. They sat a while longer by the dying fire, saying little. Somewhere in the quiet rooms, something felt changed. Had the wish worked at all, and if it had, what would it cost them? Let's pause and catch 4 phrases from the first half. First, to tempt fate. If you tempt fate, you do something risky that seems almost to invite bad luck. Morris feared the family would tempt fate by keeping the paw. Second, let sleeping dogs lie. A sleeping dog is calm, wake it, and it may bite. So to let sleeping dogs lie is to leave a settled matter alone, rather than stir up new trouble. The soldier begged Mr. White to let sleeping dogs lie. Third, be careful what you wish for. This is a warning. Getting exactly what you want may bring trouble you never expected. Morris told them to be careful what they wished for. And fourth, to have second thoughts. When you have second thoughts, you begin to doubt a decision you have already made. Mr. White had second thoughts the moment the paw twisted in his hand. 4 phrases so far. Now, back to that quiet house and the morning after the wish. Morning came bright and ordinary. Over breakfast, the family laughed about the paw, and Herbert went off to his work at the factory as always. But that afternoon, a stranger stood outside the gate, hesitating as if unsure whether to come in. At last he knocked. He was a smartly dressed man from the company where Herbert worked, and he spoke carefully, avoiding their eyes. There had been an accident, he said. Herbert had been caught in the machinery. As gently as he could, he told them their son was dead. Mrs. White cried out. Mr. White sat frozen. Then the man added that the company took no blame for what had happened but wished to give the family a sum of money. "How much?" whispered Mr. White. £200, the man said, and there it was, the price of that wish, set out in plain figures. Their son's life traded for the exact sum they had named. They had got their £200, now they would pay the price, they would suffer the bitter cost of what they had asked for. Mr. White sank down without a sound. They buried Herbert, and the days that followed were long and gray. The old couple moved through the silent house like ghosts, worn down by grief. About a week later, deep in the night, Mrs. White suddenly sat up in bed. She was beside herself, so overcome with sorrow that she could hardly control herself. "The Pa," she cried. "We still have the second wish. Wish him alive again, bring our boy back." Her husband was horrified. He tried to reason with her. Herbert had been gone more than a week. The accident had left him terribly broken. But the mother would not listen. She wanted her son back at any cost, no matter what it took, no matter what came with him. Trembling, Mr. White found the paw, held it up, and wished a second time, that his son might live once more. The paw twisted in his hand, and he dropped it with a shudder. Then they waited in the cold dark. Nothing. Slowly, the mother's face fell. And Mr. White felt a small, guilty flood of relief. But out in the road, the silence was about to break. Then it came. A knock at the front door, soft at first, far off. Then another, louder. Mrs. White sprang up. "It's Herbert," she cried, and rushed for the stairs. The knocking grew loud, then frantic, shaking the whole house. The mother fought with the heavy bolt, calling out her son's name. But Mr. White was on his knees in the dark, searching for the paw. He could not come to terms with what stood outside. He could not accept the terrible truth that his son had been dead and buried a week. Whatever was knocking now, it was not the boy he remembered. His fingers closed on the paw at last. As the bolt slid slowly back, he lifted it and gasped his third and final wish. At once, the knocking stopped. The mother pulled the door wide open, and a cold wind rushed in. The road outside lay silent and empty under the lamplight. Nothing was there, nothing at all. And so the 3 wishes were spent, and the price of each had been paid in full. 4 more phrases before we close. First, to pay the price. To pay the price is to suffer the bad result of something you did or wanted. The Whites paid a terrible price for their £200. Next, at any cost. If you want something at any cost, you want it no matter what must be given up or suffered. The grieving mother wanted her son back at any cost. Third, to be beside yourself. When you are beside yourself, you are so full of feeling, grief, fear, or joy that you can barely control yourself. Mrs. White was beside herself the night she remembered the second wish. And fourth, to come to terms with something. To come to terms with a hard truth is to slowly accept it, even though it hurts. Mr. White could not come to terms with what might be standing at his door. Notice how each phrase carries a little of the story's sorrow inside it. So there is our story, W. Jacobs' famous warning about wishes and fate. A family was given a charm that granted 3 wishes. They wished for money, and the money came, but only through their son's death. In their grief, they wished him alive again, then wished the horror away before the door could open. Now, 3 quick questions to test your listening. 1. What did Sergeant Major Morris warn the family before he left? 2. How did the family come to receive the £200 they had wished for? And 3. Why did Mr. White make his third and final wish? Pause the video and answer in your own words, out loud if you can. Then share your answers in the comments. I always enjoy reading them. Thank you for listening all the way to the end of this dark little tale. Stories like this one are a gentle, natural way to grow your English. No pressure, just listening. Here's a tip for your second time through. Play it once for the story, then again for the 8 phrases, and see how many you catch on your own. If your nerves can take one more, another eerie story is waiting on your screen. Let it play. And tap subscribe so a new story finds you each week. Sleep well tonight, and be careful what you wish for.